Every single day, you do something that no other animal on Earth has ever done. You take raw ingredients, apply heat, and transform them into something your body can extract far more energy from than it ever could in their natural state. You cook. And that act, so ordinary, so unremarkable, so automatic that you barely think about it, is the reason you exist the way you do. Not metaphorically, literally. The brain you are using right now to read these words, the body you carry, the lifespan you have, the social world you inhabit. All of it traces back, in ways that most people have never considered, to the moment a human ancestor first held food over a flame. Cooking is not just a cultural practice, it is a biological event, and understanding what it did to the human body will change how you think about what it means to be human. It starts with energy. The fundamental problem of being a large-brained animal is that brains are extraordinarily expensive. The human brain makes up roughly 2% of your body weight, but consumes around 20% of your total caloric intake. No other organ in your body comes close to that metabolic cost. And for most of evolutionary history, the energy required to run a brain of this size simply was not available in sufficient quantities from raw food. Richard Wrangham, a primatologist at Harvard University, spent decades developing what he calls the cooking hypothesis. His argument is direct and radical. He proposes that cooking was not simply a nice addition to the human toolkit. It was the catalyst that made the evolution of the modern human brain possible in the first place. Without cooking, Wrangham argues, we would not be here. Here is why. Cooking does something to food that no digestive system can do on its own. It pre-digests it. The application of heat breaks down the cell walls of plant matter, denatures proteins in meat, gelatinizes starches, and destroys many of the natural compounds that plants produce to resist being eaten. The result is food that your body can extract dramatically more energy from than the raw equivalent. Studies show that cooked meat yields around 30% more usable calories than raw meat. Cooked starch yields up to 80% more usable energy than raw starch. With every meal, cooking is essentially doing part of your digestive work before the food even enters your body. This energy surplus changed everything. The first thing it changed was the gut. Processing raw food, especially fibrous plant matter, requires an enormous digestive system. Great apes have digestive tracts roughly 2 to 3 times larger relative to body size than humans. They spend a significant portion of their waking hours chewing. Gorillas chew for up to 8 hours a day. The shift to cooked food, which is far easier to digest, allowed the human digestive tract to shrink dramatically over evolutionary time. The energy that had been directed toward maintaining a massive gut was now available to be redirected elsewhere. Where it was redirected, Wrangham argues, was into the brain. This is the counterintuitive heart of the cooking hypothesis. The expansion of the human brain, the most dramatic and consequential evolutionary change in the history of primates, was made possible in part by the shrinking of the human gut. The metabolic savings from a smaller digestive system, combined with the surplus energy provided by cooked food, created the conditions in which larger and more complex brains could be sustained. Brain tissue is metabolically costly. It can only grow when the energy equation shifts in its favor. Cooking shifted it. The fossil record supports this. Homo erectus, the first human ancestor to show clear evidence of controlled fire use and cooking, appeared around 1.8 million years ago, and Homo erectus showed something that no prior hominin had shown to the same degree: a dramatic reduction in jaw size, molar size, and gut capacity, combined with a significant increase in brain size. The anatomical signature of the cooking transition is written into the fossil record with striking clarity. Smaller teeth, smaller jaws, smaller gut, bigger brain. The transformation happened across a period of hundreds of thousands of years, but the direction was unmistakable and irreversible. But cooking did not just reshape the body, it reshaped time. A chimpanzee in the wild spends up to 6 hours a day chewing. Raw food requires enormous mechanical processing before it can be swallowed. Cooking reduced that processing time dramatically. When archaeologist Rachel Carmody at Harvard studied the energetics of cooked versus raw food consumption, she found that cooking reduced the energy cost of digestion while simultaneously increasing the energy yield of food. The combined effect was transformative. Suddenly, human ancestors had hours of free time that had previously been consumed entirely by eating. What did they do with that time? They talked. They planned. They maintained social relationships. They invented. The same shift that freed up metabolic energy for brain growth also freed up daily time for the activities that brains are best at. The campfire, the site where cooking happened, became the first social institution. It was the place where early humans gathered not just to eat, but to exchange information, reinforce social bonds, tell stories, and transmit knowledge across generations. The anthropologist Polly Wiesner at the University of Utah studied the difference between daytime and nighttime conversations in contemporary hunter-gatherer societies. Her findings were striking. Daytime conversations were overwhelmingly focused on practical matters, food, logistics, complaints. But nighttime conversations, held around the fire, were dominated by stories, by emotional and social content, by the transmission of cultural knowledge across time. The campfire, Wiesner concluded, was the birthplace of storytelling. And storytelling, the ability to encode complex social and causal information into narrative form and transmit it to others, is one of the most distinctively human cognitive capacities we possess. Cooking also changed the human social contract in a profound way. Raw food can be consumed wherever and whenever it is found. Cooked food requires a fixed location, a fire, a waiting period. It requires cooperation. Someone to tend the fire while others gather ingredients, someone to guard the food while it cooks. The emergence of cooking created the first domestic arrangements, the first division of labor, the first expectation of sharing. Research by Wrangham and others suggests that the social norms around food sharing, the expectation that food prepared together will be distributed fairly, are among the oldest and most deeply embedded social rules in human societies. They predate language. They may predate anything we would recognize as culture. The implications extend even into human biology at the most intimate level. Wrangham proposes that cooking created the conditions for the formation of pair bonds, the tendency of humans to form extended, cooperative male-female partnerships that is unusual among primates. In a world where food required fire, and fire required a fixed camp, and a fixed camp created a predictable location where cooked food would be available, the incentive structure for cooperation between males and females changed fundamentally. The human family, in Wrangham's view, is in part a product of the campfire. Today, you live in a world so saturated with cooking that you barely notice it. Every restaurant, every grocery store, every kitchen appliance, every recipe, every cuisine in the history of human civilization is a downstream consequence of that first moment when a human ancestor held food over a flame and noticed that it changed. Your brain, sitting behind your eyes as you read this, is the most complex object in the known universe. It contains roughly 86 billion neurons, each connected to thousands of others, capable of representing and processing information at a level of sophistication that no other biological structure has ever achieved. And it exists, at least in part, because somewhere between 1 and 2 million years ago, one of your ancestors discovered that fire makes food better. The most transformative technology in human history was not the wheel. It was not the printing press. It was not the internet. It was a campfire and a piece of meat. And you use it every day without thinking twice.